Welcome to this session, which is called Avoiding Crisis Burnout. My name is Michael Levitt, and I am the Chief Burnout Officer for Breakfast Leadership. Our organization works with teams and individuals on burnout prevention, but oftentimes it ends up being burnout recovery because so many people are burning out, and it's increasing ever since COVID-19 became a huge part of our lives. The question we have is, what is burnout? We hear it a lot and we hear about people being burned out, but many of us may not know exactly what burnout is. Burnout is basically a prolonged state of extreme stress, both emotional, physical, and mental, tossed in with exhaustion. And when you put all of these ingredients together, you're burned out. And it's not a fun place to be. There are many teams and organizations that are facing this. And as an HR professional, it's a challenge for you to navigate through these waters and, of course, prevent yourself from being burned out. How does burnout occur? When you have burnout, it comes when you're emotionally drained, when you're overwhelmed. And in HR, we all know there are many days, if not weeks or months, where you can be overwhelmed with the task at hand. If you have a lot of turnover in your organization, you're constantly hiring and you're constantly going through the process of bringing on new people and making sure they fit in the organization. And if they don't, then you need to bring on new people, and the dynamics and workplace culture and all the day-to-day asks that you get as an HR professional, those never end. So it just couples up. But when you're overwhelmed and you're not able to meet these constant demands of doing your job, and your team is not able to keep up with the constant demands of the job, it really creates a lot of problems for you and your organization. Now, there are 5 key signs of burnout that I see in the work that I do. And these are all symptoms of a deeper reason why people burn out. But these are the common things that you can look for in yourself, but also in your teammates, loved ones, anybody you encounter, to see if they're actually burned out. First one is poor sleep. Are they not, are you or are people that you know not sleeping well? They tossing and turning in the night, or just not getting the restful sleep that they desperately need? As your motivation dropped off, are there things in life that you used to do and enjoy and now you don't? Are these things that you're struggling with? This is definitely a warning sign that burnout could be in your presence. If you're noticing your employees or yourself making increased mistakes and they're forgetful about things and they didn't used to be, that's a red flag to look at to see, okay, maybe they're really stressed or approaching burnout. Struggling to make the easiest decisions. I have an issue being able to tell my better half what I want to eat for dinner. She'll ask, "What do you want to eat for dinner?" And I just basically look like I got hit with the Men in Black pen and I can't remember a thing. So that's an easy one. But if you're struggling to make the most simplistic decisions in your life, it definitely could be a warning sign that you might be approaching or are burned out. And for me, in my own personal story, when I was burned out, which we'll get to later, if you're more irritable, or if you've never been really irritable, but now you are, that is definitely a red flag for people to look at and say, maybe there's some problems going on and maybe burnout is the situation that you're facing. How does burnout occur? Those things that we mentioned before, the poor sleep and all of those things, are symptoms of being burned out, but they're not the cause of it. Oftentimes, and we see this in the workplace, we get messages all the time, not only email, but text messages or messages within an app or a program that your organization uses that constantly is pinging you. That's an IT term if you don't understand what ping means, but constantly contacting you basically and saying, okay, message, you need to respond to it. And we've been conditioned, as soon as we see a new email come in or a text alert, we grab our phone or we go to the computer and we look at it, and we don't take the time to say, okay, we're going to set our time when we look at email. We're going to set our time when we respond to other things, but instead we're just constantly playing whack-a-mole and going to this task, this task, this task, and it's just overwhelming. And as a leader, for example, if you're sending emails to your team at all hours of the day and night, you're conditioning your employees that that is the norm. That shouldn't be the norm. You should stick to business hours when you correspond with your team and stop sending emails after hours on weekends. Unless your operations are open during those times, then I get it. But many organizations, they're 9 to 5. So don't send emails at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. If you need to remind something or somebody with something, then make a note of it and send that message on Monday. You'll do yourself and your organization a huge favor if you do that. Ever since the advent of COVID-19, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, a lot of us are working some extremely long hours, and we're getting Zoom fatigue or Skype fatigue. Uh, and the challenge with that is you're not allowing your employees the time to do the deep work. I know we're all fumbling around right now during this pandemic, and we're fumbling around trying to figure out what we should do because we've been removed from our normal work environment. Well, by now, at the time of this recording, we're a few months into it, we should have a pretty good idea on how to do our job. And we know the pluses and the minuses and the challenges that we're facing. However, you need to have fewer meetings. Get the help to them that you need. At this time, better than ever, we need to shift our mindset from being managers to being coaches. What's the outcome that we're trying to accomplish? What's the work we're trying to complete? Coach those people into being able to complete it. When you do that, it's a subtle shift, but it's a huge one, and it'll have big dividends for how your employees perform, both remotely or within the offices. Work demands, home demands, all at once. As we've alluded to with COVID-19, we have some significant challenges because one, we're not working for many of us in our normal work environments. We had to set up our home offices to be a workplace for us. And for some people, that may have been a challenge. Also, coupled with the fact if you live with someone, in all likelihood, they're working from home too. So you've got additional people there and maybe not dedicated office space because most homes don't have cubicles in them. So unless you set something up or have separate rooms, there's some coordination going on. Also, toss in the fact that many of us are now full-time school teachers because the schools have been closed. So add that to your workday. No wonder we're pulling out our hair. Of course, from my image, you can tell that I don't have any, so I don't have any to pull out. Thankfully, my children are past school age, so it's not a challenge that I have to face, but I know many people are, and it's really difficult for them because everybody, all of your employees, your leadership, everyone in between, they all desire to do a great job. They don't want to do a lousy job for their organization, especially now. They want something that they know that they can do something for their own self-confidence and also for the benefit of the organization. So in these times, we have to be a little bit more flexible and get real crystal clear as an organization on who you are. What are the things you are supposed to do as an organization? And if you don't know those things, well, then I would suggest asking your customers, what do they need right now? And that should be an ongoing conversation you should have. What do you need from us in order for that customer to be successful? And do that really, really well and scale operations to match that because the needs of your customers change over time and everything's in a state of flux. But over time, your customers will be happier because you've been in communication with them to find out what do you need from us right now. And if you hammer that in and do that really well and get your troops to rally around that particular initiative, your organization is going to be a lot less stressful than what it would be if you just continue to try to operate the way things were before. as I've alluded to, work projects versus school homework, Zoom meetings versus mealtime, replying to emails after hours and versus home activities. Your pets are wondering, why in the world are you still here? You are supposed to leave this house. Why are you still hanging around? You're impacting all your pets' secret parties that they have. If anybody's ever seen the movie Pets, you'll get it where I'm coming from. Your pets are going, why are you here? I need my sleep. And so their worlds are being uprooted in a way too for those of us that don't normally work from home. It's interesting times for all of us. The key thing is, and this is my friend Nancy, by the way, is not to burn out. See, that image wouldn't work good for me because I don't have hair to be able to pull out. But Nancy, thankfully has a lot of hair, so it works out well for you if you do. So, but I don't want you to pull your hair out. For those of you that still have hair, keep it. It's good. And I know many of you may have not have been able to get a haircut lately. So interesting hairstyles. I will leave it at that. My pre-COVID and post-COVID hairstyle will be the same, thankfully. More importantly, how can we reduce burnout quickly? And as I alluded to before, burnout is not something that happens overnight. It builds up over time, and it's because of a variety of factors, but there's also some deep-rooted causes to burnout. Your beliefs, your behaviors, your thought patterns, maybe past traumas that you've had, your type A personality, you're driven, you want to do the great job, and you always have, but in order to maintain that type of level, it takes a lot more effort. And unfortunately, for many of us, we go too far and we start shortchanging our own self-care. And when we do that, it's going to create some huge problems for your life. It did for me, and I'll allude to that, or I'll share that story momentarily. But at the end of the day, you want to start taking better care of yourself because this is the only version of you that you have. So you need to take better care of yourself. We talked about sleep before. Getting restful sleep is crucial. So that means, and this is, and I will publicly admit, a bit of a pillow princess. And my brother and my better half will both agree that I am. My pillow needs to be a certain weight, needs to be a certain temperature, consistency, everything. I just can't use a regular pillow. I have to find a special one. And it's an ongoing battle, but when I find one, I'm in bliss because I sleep so well with it. Room temperature, same thing. Weight of the blanket, all of these factors are important to get that ideal amount of sleep. Cutting down screen time so you don't have the blue light situation. All of these things are important. You need to figure out what works for you because what works for you may not work for somebody else. And a challenge sometimes is your life partner, wife, spouse, whomever that you share a room with. In all likelihood, isn't composed the same way as you. So you may like the temperature in your room to be cooler. He or she may want it warmer. So good luck with that. I know a good divorce attorney if you need it. Please don't. It's not good. But anyway, eat healthier. Now, I'm not about to tell you to just switch your diet to all kale right now. That's not important. You need to find out what works for you. And one of the things that I suggest you do is keep a food journal. Now, that's great. You can list down everything you eat, but there's an additional component that you need to add to it is write down your energy levels, how you feel that day, because what it'll do is it'll give you some information on what foods are impacting you, impacting your sleep, impacting your energy levels, impacting how you feel. Because you'll find out that you have some food intolerances. You may have some food allergies. I know I do. I'm allergic to potatoes, of all things. So there's all of these little nuances in life that you may not know about, but they're impacting your well-being and your stress and your ability to do the things you need to do. And real quick, to circle back to the sleep thing, we do damage to our bodies on a daily basis. You can live the most healthiest life, be happy, fulfilled. Life is awesome. No worries in the world. But we still do damage to our bodies just because of what we do in life, atmosphere, exposure to certain things. So your body, when you're sleeping, repairs that damage. And if you're not sleeping well and getting restful sleep, your body's not able to repair that damage. So what happens is the next day's damage gets added on, and that starts piling up. And then next, you start having some health issues, and you don't want those. They're not good. I've alluded to this before. You need to prioritize your self-care first. We've heard on the airplanes back in the day when we could fly that you put on your oxygen mask first. And that's important. You need to do that because no one can take care of things for you except you. And if you are prioritizing your self-care and being the best version of you, then when you do help others, they're getting a better version of you than they did before. So think about that. And towards the end of this session, I'm going to talk about a thing that I refer to as the bucket list. But it's important for you to do 2 to 3 things every week that you love to do. And we'll get back into that in a moment. What goals do you have in life? Do you have goals? What do you want to do when you grow up? Although, as Jimmy Buffett warns us, you don't want to grow old or grow up. Don't. It's a trap. But if you don't have goals, figure out what you want to do and write them down. Because if you write them down, statistics show that you'll actually have a better chance to accomplish those goals than if they're bouncing around in this thing. So document your goals. Get active. And that doesn't mean become a gym rat per se. Unless you want to do that, then go for it. I'm happy for you. But be more active. If you're driving to work, maybe park further back in the parking lot, or if you go to a store, park towards the back. Get in more steps in the day. Move around a little bit. Go for a walk after dinner or early morning or whatever the case may be. But any exercise that you do decide to take on, I do recommend that you consult with a physician or a medical provider to make sure you don't injure yourself, because you don't need to end up in the hospital trying to take care of yourself. That's not something you want to do. So get with somebody that knows how to properly be active and exercise so you don't hurt yourself. And crucial, and this is one of the huge keys in preventing burnout, is boundaries around your time. Boundaries. We've heard that word. Many of us don't know what it actually means, or we think it's something to do with physical boundaries or other type of boundaries, but there's a bunch. There's mental boundaries. There's in how you think, your thought process, your behaviors, your programming, the things you say to yourself. We are horrible to ourselves when that self-talk kicks in. So you need to have some mental boundaries on how you approach yourself and how you approach others, and it makes such a huge difference if you get it right. Emotional boundaries. During COVID-19, many of us have seen some big challenges in life. There's been a lot of situations where people are not doing well, and they're waiting in long lines to get a couple bags of groceries. Hopefully for most of us, we're not in that situation, but we feel for those people, and we have to be careful that while you can be empathetic to somebody, you have to keep it in check so you don't go down a deep, dark hole, because all of a sudden you start thinking that's happening to you, but it's not. But you're feeling it because you so deeply care about people. So you have to keep that in check. Physical boundaries are, well, keep 6 feet apart from each other. I think we're all experts at that now, aren't we? Or at least I hope we are. Uh, and hopefully there'll come a time where we can ease that up a little bit. But until then, maintain those physical boundaries. It'll make a big difference for you and everyone else. Spiritual boundaries, no matter what your walk of faith is, or if you're not in faith, respect others, seek to understand, but allow people to have their own, beliefs, and harmonize with everybody. That makes a big difference. Sexual, hopefully, should not be too difficult to figure out what that means. Is just sexual boundaries. No means no. Me too, and all of the things that we've heard about in recent times are important. Make sure that you protect those sexual boundaries and you respect the boundaries of others, and ask frequently, because sometimes they change their minds, and if they do, you want to be aware of that. Material boundaries is the things you have. And you can have a house full of stuff, which is fine. I tend to be an essentialist. Greg McCown wrote the book Essentialism, which is an amazing book. I highly recommend you read it, because for me, in my life, to help me keep from burnout is just to have things in my life that are essential, and that changes over time. But I have the things that I need and are essential for me to be able to do things that I need to do. When I have all of those things and they're set up the best way for me, my life flows so much easier. So Figure out what's essential in your life and what isn't. And if there are things in your life that aren't essential, then donate them, sell them, recycle them, whatever the case may be. Unfortunately, that also goes for people. And this talk isn't long enough to dive into that, but sometimes there are people in your life that aren't essential to you. And if there are, then I highly suggest that you talk with a therapist and figure out how to approach that in a way that's to best serve you. Money. Yeah, money boundary is a huge, huge issue. Don't spend more than you get. Money, of course, is a huge challenge for a lot of people. And even during a pandemic, it's probably worse because so many people have lost their jobs. And those that are still in jobs are working harder, and they've got different challenges and everything that comes up with it. It's huge. If you don't have boundaries in your life, these dominoes are going to fall. And I'm going to share a story about my burnout journey and what happens if you don't have boundaries in your life. Back in 2009 to 2010, over a period of 369 days, I had a heart attack that should have killed me. I lost my job during the economic recession. My family car was repossessed by the bank, and then finally my home was foreclosed. That all happened in a year and 4 days. And it was definitely your worst case scenarios. All of those losses on their own are significant. Maybe some of you have experienced some of those. I certainly hope you haven't experienced them all, but I did. And I will say this, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because all of those things happened because I was burned out. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't sleeping right. I was irritable. I was not a nice person to be around. I was making mistakes at work. And it all came to a crashing halt in May of 2009. And my heart attack, I had a blockage in my left anterior descending artery, which for those that are familiar with cardiology, they refer to that artery as the widowmaker, because typically if someone has a heart attack with blockages in that artery, they don't survive. Still here. As I said, it's the greatest thing that ever happened to me, all those losses, because it gave me an option. And I actually had three choices afterwards. Number one, hey, I survived all of those things. I'm Superman. I'm, powerful. I can withstand anything. I don't need to change a thing. Option two was to play the victim and blame everybody and say, that restaurant shouldn't have fed me that garbage food. My bosses shouldn't have fired me. The bank should have never taken away my car, my home. I could have had that attitude, but I chose option three, which was to take a deep, hard look at why I burned out, what caused it, what were the deep meaning, deep rooted causes of my burnout. And some of them were type A personality, people pleaser, driven, wanting affirmation of a good job, wanted to be a pillar in the community, all of these things that so many of us want. I did, but I didn't have it in check. I went too far. The pendulum swung too far the wrong way. So I'm thankful to be alive. I'm thankful to be able to do the work that I do and to warn people that they don't have to have their own year of worst case scenarios if they get ahead of burnout before it's too late. Exercise time. And I referred to it earlier. This is the bucket list, and my version of the bucket list is to take a sheet of paper and draw a line down the middle of it. And afterwards, there's a link to download this resource for free, a template of the bucket list, so you can use it that way if you want. But for now, you can take a sheet of paper and draw a line down the middle of it, a vertical line. And I want you to start thinking about all the things in life that bring you joy and happiness. And these things can be pretty simple. They can be going to your favorite coffee shop, a favorite restaurant, going to the movies, going to a sporting event, concerts, all these things we could do before COVID-19. Hopefully when you're watching this, we can do those things again. But these are all things that you like. And just take a few minutes and list all of these items out and be as robust as possible. And they can be as something as subtle as going for a walk in the morning to going on a 3-week cruise kind of thing, whatever. List it. I want you to list those things. It'll take a few minutes to do this, and you can pause this and then go back to it. Uh, but take some time to do this. Now, after you've done this list, and you can always add back to it if you want, the next part of this exercise is on the right side of all of those items that you listed, I want you to write down the last time you did those things or experienced those things. Now, I can't hear you right now, but typically when I present this exercise in a workshop or a keynote speech or anything like that, I tend to hear a lot of moans and groans. And the reason is so many people have realized that it's been a long time since they've done things that they enjoy to do. And when I'm in an audience, I will ask people, okay, why? Why haven't you done those things? And the common answer is, I don't have time. I've been looking for that 26-hour clock. I've gone to IKEA, I've looked at Amazon, I've looked at all these places. The SHRM bookstore, they don't sell them. They don't sell them because they don't exist. We all get 24 hours a day, and we all get an opportunity to structure how we spend our time. Don't delegate that. Yes, many of us work. Yes, we have an exchange of time for services, but you can't give up 24 hours a day and not take care of yourself and do the things that are important to you. Ouch. Yeah, it's a big ouch when you realize that you're not doing things in your life that you enjoy. So the next step after this is I want you to go on your calendar, and over the next 10 days, I want you to schedule 2 or 3 things that are on that list. Now, of course, if we're in the middle of a pandemic, there may be some things that you can't do, but I'm pretty certain there's at least a couple that you can. So put them on your calendar and do them. And treat those appointments, don't cancel them, treat those appointments as if they were the most important meeting you've ever had with your boss. Because you know who the boss of your life is? You. You're the boss of your life. You control your time. Start sprinkling in some things that you enjoy doing. And what you will find is that your life will be better, more fulfilled, happier, less stressed, reduced burnout. That template's available at breakfastleadership.com/bucket. Just enter in some information and I'll get the bucket template over to you as soon as possible. Key takeaways from this talk. You need to have boundaries conversations with your employer and your family, especially during while you're working from home. Okay. You need to establish when you're on the clock and when you're not. Okay. If you don't, then there's no off switch. You're just constantly working. For many of us early in our careers, we probably worked somewhere we had to punch in or punch out at a time clock. Many of us don't have that opportunity to do that anymore, so we never punch out, and that's not good for our health. If you're working remotely, you need to set an alarm to signal the end of your workday. Think of Fred Flintstone. At the end of the day, the horn would sound, he'd yell yabba dabba doo, he'd slide down the dinosaur's tail, and everything was great in the world. Well, if you need to play that chime or download that sound to signal the end of the workday, do it. But you need to have a clear end to your workday and also a clear start. Yes, you might have some ebbs and flows of your day because of child care responsibilities or other things. There's many caregivers that are dealing with aging parents and loved ones. So figure out a way to do it, but you need to have a clear end to your workday and not 10 seconds before you go to bed. You need to have more time between when you finish work and when you go to sleep so you can decompress and give yourself a fighting chance to heal. Track your interruptions every day. Now, what I mean by that is the number of emails you get, text messages, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. All the notifications you get in a day are interruptions. And I want you to track those. You just take a sheet of paper and just keep track of them. There's a resource on my website as well you can grab if you want, and I'll make sure that they're linked to this presentation. But keep track of your interruptions because you will be alarmed how many times you're interrupted in a day. The highest record I've heard from anybody was, I think it was around 140 interruptions during their workday. And I asked them, how did you get your work done that day? And their answer was, I didn't. There's too many interruptions. So on your phone, I tell people, turn off every notification that you have on your phone other than the text messages, the phone itself, which is a little emoji that looks like a phone for those of you that have never used your smartphone as an actual telephone. And if there is a specific app that you use for your organization, which is used for messaging, you're going to want to keep that active so you don't miss messages for work. But everything else, the Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, whatever, turn those notifications off. You don't need to see every instant thing, because once you see that little red light on your smartphone, your brain goes, I have to get rid of that red light. So you need to turn that off and then schedule a time to check those things. And you will find you'll spend less time on those time sucking things and more time on the things that are important in your life. Thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate the opportunity to share this conversation with you today.